Well, hi everyone, and welcome to a new edition of You and My Borough with myself, Scott Wilson, and Dom Shaw from the Northern Echo. Hope you're all keeping well. You well, Dom?
I am, mate. I've just picked up my brew there, just as you came with a. Are you well? I should have. Yeah, I'm sound. Yeah, all good here, Ty. Yeah, all good.
Good.
That was a frustrating one Sunday, wasn't it? Which we'll obviously get into.
Yeah, well, we'll start on that. You had the delights of a schlep to and from Carrow Road, which, let's be honest, there is no quick way to get from Middlesbrough to Carrow Road, as I think we've all found out in the past. But just a quick bit before we start. If you're watching us on YouTube, then please do give us a like, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out if you do that. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think, what you want talking about. If you're listening on any of the various podcast platforms that we are available on, then rate, review, and again, drop me and Dom a line on X or any of our social channels just to let us know what's going on and what you would like us to talk about and all that kind of stuff. Right, let's start with the weekend just gone then, Dom. It feels, how many times have we said rinse and repeat? This one probably hurt even more, though, let's be honest. I mean, 3-1 up, played some superb football. Feels like everything's rosy in the garden, obviously coming off the back of the home win over Sheffield United. Felt like the momentum was there. They get the penalty. They miss the penalty. Bad penalty from Conway. We can talk about that in a minute, but they missed the penalty. And then it's unfair to say the wheels come off because it's the second worldie of the game from Borja Sainz, and it's well, we can talk about should Dieng do better on the equaliser, I guess, but it kind of just feeds into that narrative of Borough not getting what they deserve and somehow finding a way to toss away points game after game after game.
Yeah, I think what you said there, it feels the most frustrating of the lot, and I think it does because Borough had been so good for so long.
Yeah,
on Sunday, I tweeted at half time. It was without doubt the best league half of the season so far. It was in isolation. Never mind the fact that they went 1-0 down and responded so well for that to that goal, and they were playing against a team who haven't lost at home for a year. I think it's 24 games now in all competitions. Norwich were handy. Norwich were good. So to be so dominant and to be in such a position of power at half time, deservedly so, was credit to what had been a brilliant half. And that continued for 25 minutes. For 25 minutes of the second half, there was no danger whatsoever. And then in the space of 4 minutes, I was talking to one of my mates after the game on Sunday, and he made the point, in the space of 4 minutes, Borough missed a penalty, conceded a goal, and their best player had been taken off in Ben Doak. And the momentum swing of those three things combined just made an inevitable feeling of we know what's coming here. When Norwich equalised with 10 minutes left, I thought I can see them winning this. Well, obviously there was a sending off. Borough steadied the ship then. But it felt different, I think, to Watford. I kind of tried to put this to Carrick afterwards. After Watford, you're looking at it and thinking, two bad goals to concede and Borough shooting themselves in the foot. They're to blame. At Norwich, it felt slightly different. Borough should still obviously see it out when you're 3-1 up with 20 minutes to go. But the penalty miss changed the mood. Then Sainz scores an absolute perler, and suddenly in that the game had been transformed. The third goal's a shocker to concede. It's a fluke, and Dieng has to do better for me.
Yeah.
Both rolled into one. I would probably worth talking about Dieng because I think several fans have made the point to me since Sunday about Dieng. But it's one of them where Carrick comes away really frustrated. We talked to Hayden Hackney this week, and he was saying how they were really down in the dressing room afterwards. And yet I think it backs up what Carrick tells us every week, that we're on the right track. You know, we will get to where we want to be because we're playing so well in periods and games, and they did for long.
We'll get to the good stuff in a minute, and like you said, there was a lot of good stuff, and it would be unfair to brush that aside, really. And I think there is still a lot of signs that Borough are on the right track. But is there a soft centre to this side? Is there a problem, an issue, whatever, that they get to a position of strength, and then the minute anything starts going wrong, it snowballs into 10, 15, 20 minutes of game-changing problems. And, we have seen that a lot this season. What's the problem there? Is it mentality? Is it a lack of leadership? Is it, clearly we've seen individual errors, but is it people repeatedly making too many individual errors? What do you put it down to?
Honestly, I don't know, but I think it's absolutely a fair accusation. Because it's not just this season. I remember last season us talking a few times about Borough conceding a flurry of goals in a small space of time in games that they concede a goal and then go to pot for 10, 15 minutes, wouldn't they? And then give themselves too much to do. The leadership thing, well, possibly, very possibly. I think Carrick got his changes wrong in the second half on Sunday. It's easy to be wise after the event. I know that. So, but Doak being replaced felt game changing, just as it did at Watford when Doak went off. Suddenly, Borough didn't have an out ball. Now, I'm sure when Carrick is asked about this on Thursday, he will understandably say he's 18. This is his first. This is his first taste of senior football, so I completely get that. But I still think his withdrawal made an impact. Conway going off as well immediately after the penalty. Clearly, that was a decision that was made before the penalty. And I know we'll get to Conway. Fair play to him for coming out and speaking to BBC Tees afterwards, because it'd have been easy to say no, wouldn't it, after missing a decisive penalty like that. But could Howson have been brought on earlier? Morris has played a lot of football. International break. Could Howson have come on earlier just to help tighten things up a little bit?
It feels a little bit to me that while Carrick does make changes, as you said there, and changes that probably didn't work, I don't think what he does is necessarily make changes to tactically change the way that Borough are doing things, to almost shut up shop for 5 or 10 minutes when something goes wrong. And you do just wonder, after Sainz has scored that worldie, is there a need then for Borough to say, okay, for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, let's change the way we're doing things here. Let's just dig in. Let's not take risks. Let's almost have 5 or 10 minutes of playing differently. Then once we've weathered a storm, if there is one, then we can go back to the way we're going to play it. And Carrick doesn't really do that, does he?
Well, it's the same at Watford, isn't it? At Watford, Borough should have won that game. But having conceded the equaliser, the priority immediately becomes don't lose it. Yeah. Don't lose the game. Get a point. And then it's a double whammy. But then I think when you talk about the leadership element, that shouldn't be an issue when you look through the team. No. To go through. And I know Ayling wasn't in there on Saturday, but Luke Ayling's captain has captained Leeds. Rav van den Berg is only a kid, but he's a leader. There's real presence there, isn't there? George Edmondson, bags of experience. Neto Borges was captain at Clermont. Hayden Hackney's wearing the armband. Riley McGree's an international midfielder. You could go on and on and on, couldn't you? So I don't think I don't look at the team and think that there's a real lack of leadership. But there's clearly an issue. There's clearly an issue there.
Yeah. Couple of individuals then. Conway, you've mentioned. I mean, harsh to be too critical because he scored 2 goals. Probably his best game for Borough. He's looked a massive threat up front. Yet again, for the second game in a row, he's more than justified. Well, certainly this game, he's justified his presence ahead of Latterlath and Carrick's decision not to bring Latterlath straight in, even though obviously he got the winner in the midweek before. It's a bloody awful penalty, though. At any stage of the game, it's a bad one, isn't it?
And I had a few fans kind of messaging afterwards or tweeting afterwards saying that was he only on it, Conway, because he was on a hat-trick? Well, no, he wasn't. He scored the penalty against Portsmouth. He'd have taken that. I love it when you win a penalty and your centre forward picks the ball.
Yeah,
centre forwards are judged on goals, aren't they? So you don't get a better chance than a penalty. It is a bad pen. There's no getting away from that. I mean, the kind of funny thing was George Long, for the 70 minutes before that, looked like if you'd have tickled or rolled anything towards him, he'd have let it in. He'd had a bit of a shocker, really, and then he goes and saves the pen. But like penalty misses happen, don't they? That happens. Clearly, it has an influence on the kind of mood and the swing of the game. and it G'd up the Norwich fans, who were a tough lot, I think, by the way. They didn't take them long to get on the back. And it changed the feel in the stands. Even with that penalty miss, and I know it's a worldie that Sainz goes and scores, Borough have to manage it better, don't they? They have to manage the situation better. But on Conway, I mean, he stays in Saturday, doesn't he? Above 2 goals, thought he led the line really, really well. Linked up well with the players behind him, particularly Azaz. And he last week we were having a conversation, weren't we? What does Carrick do in attack? I don't think there's any question this week. Conway stays in.
No, and I don't think there's any question at the other end either who starts in goal. But increasingly, as you alluded to earlier, maybe it's a conversation that we at least need to have. I mean, I'm like you. I think there's definitely an element of fluke to it. Dieng's unlucky in the way that the ball deflects off the post. I still think he's got to do better. And, throughout his Borough reign, he's done a lot of things really well, but there's always been odd moments you can point to say he's got to do better there, whether it be putting his teammates in trouble distributing it, whether it be the odd soft shot that he's let in, a mistake like that. I mean, listen, I still think Dieng absolutely is Borough's number one. I'd have him in the top half of goalkeepers in the Championship. I don't think, I would comfortably have him in that bracket. But I do think he's got the propensity every now and then just to let in a soft one.
Well, it's funny you say that about being the top half keepers in the Championship. And that's not an isolated view. I was talking to a couple of freelance national reporters down at Carrow Road on Sunday before the game, and they were saying, like, going through the Borough team, and Dieng was one of the players who they picked out. But I was looking this morning, he's got the lowest save percentage rate of any goalkeeper in the Championship so far this season. And that's why I don't think this is necessarily just a reactive chat to what happened on Sunday. I don't think Dieng's had a great start to the season.
No.
The Watford goals, was it the first one? You're definitely asking questions of him after that. I think it was the first one off the top of my head. Clearly, the first 2 Norwich goals are brilliant, aren't they? But clearly, that third goal, there's questions to be asked of him. I don't think his place is immediately under threat. But I don't think he's had a great start to the season. And if that continues, well, if it continues in any other position on the pitch, look at Latte Lath up front. Latte Lath wasn't scoring goals, so was dropped. Luke Ayling didn't have a great start to the season, didn't hit the levels that he hit last season, so was dropped on Sunday. Carrick's shown he'll make those ruthless calls, and I think unless Dieng improves, then he might be next.
And obviously they've got Sol Bryn, who they've just given a new long-term contract to, and all right, there would be understandable questions about, is he ready? Well, he's got a lot of loan experience under his belt now. He's clearly wrestled ahead of Tom Glover as Borough's undisputed number 2. They've given him a new long-term contract because they back him for the future. I mean, there has to come a point where you say, okay, well, if now's the time to make a change, Bryn's ready. And it feels like they're just about at a point now where if you're not going to play him now and you feel that the time's right, then when on earth are you?
And that new contract clearly shows. We were told in the summer, weren't we, that he'd come back and impressed. Well, that new contract recently showed that he kicked on from there, really. And that I thought that set out Borough's signals for Bryn for the future. You don't hand him a new contract unless you think he's got at this stage, unless he's got a key role to play. I don't think Bryn's the only one in this boat. That Stoke Cup defeat was a sickener for him because he could have done with 1 or 2 more games, couldn't he? Yeah. I thought the scoreline was harsh on him that night. Obviously, when you're a keeper and you concede that many goals, there's immediately questions asked. But I thought probably only 1 goal off the top of my head that maybe beat him at his front post. But I thought the scoreline was harsh. But if he'd have managed like last season, like Glover, when Glover got his opportunity, when Dieng got the injury, was it like November time before the African Cup of Nations? Glover had played a fair bit of football, hadn't he, because of Borough's Carabao Cup run, whereas this year Bryn hasn't really had that opportunity. But yeah, he's clearly doing something right. He's clearly continuing to do something right behind the scenes. I'd be surprised, would you, if Carrick made an immediate change? But I might be way off. I just don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility.
No, I mean, I don't think we're there yet. And Carrick tends to be, I know he's made the laugh change, but he tends to be pretty loyal to his kind of key players. And I think, I agree with what you're saying, that if it's in any other part of the pitch, you make the change much more quickly. But it's undeniable as well that if you take your goalkeeper out, that is an issue, and that becomes a headline, and it's a story in a way that taking a midfielder out the starting lineup just isn't, So I think it would be a really big move by Carrick. I don't think we're there yet, but like you said, Dieng can't get a free pass forever.
No.
One of the players that you mentioned, Doak, obviously, who came off, and that definitely changed the kind of flow of the game at Carrow Road. I mean, he was brilliant again for an hour, wasn't he? Absolutely brilliant. A massive threat to that Norwich defence. And obviously, Arne has been talking a little bit about him this week. And, some, how can I put it? Some sites deciding to make fairly lurid headlines out of what was pretty much a throwaway comment from him on Doak and his loan and the possibility of a recall. I mean, do Borough fans have to get in any way worried about the possibility of Doak being recalled by Liverpool in January?
No. I mean, obviously, you can never say never. Circumstances change and what have you. But as things stand, there's absolutely no expectation that Liverpool will look to recall Doak. Just to kind of add some context, really, but whether you've seen the quote or not. We're recording this on Wednesday morning. Liverpool are playing Brighton Wednesday night in the Carabao Cup, and Liverpool have got a few injuries. I think Elliott, Jota, Chiesa are all out in attack, and Liverpool in the summer clearly made a conscious effort to send some of the brightest young stars out on loan, including Doak. And a couple of others. We've seen Kumas already. Kumas was at Stoke and he played in the cup game at Borough earlier this season. So Slot was asked about that and whether this is kind of the downside of sending players out when there's an opportunity, they're not there. And Slot said, well, yeah, clearly, but we've got to kind of weigh up the pros and the cons here. Yeah, they'd have been able to play tonight, but how much football are they gonna play over the course of the season? In the whole scheme of things, they're going to develop an awful lot more playing regularly, week in, week out, like Doak's doing at Borough. And then there was a throwaway line where he kind of said, well, yeah, look, having 4 of 6 attackers out is a concern. That's a worry for me. Maybe we should bring Ben Doak back, which obviously lends itself to a naughty headline. Not a naughty, a mischievous headline. Liverpool, but all parties, from what I gather, are really pleased with how Doak's loan's playing out. He's playing every week. Borough, I think it's worth pointing out here that Liverpool advised Doak that Borough would be a good fit for him. And Doak loved the feel of it anyway. He knew players, obviously knows a couple of players from the Scotland set up and had a couple of contacts there. So Jonathan Woodgate has a strong relationship with Liverpool. So the feel when he came was that it was going to be a good fit. And so it's proved in the first couple of months. And he was unplayable on Sunday again at Norwich. The Norwich manager, Thurup, was asked afterwards about the Norwich left-back who'd struggled against him. And he kind of said, look, if you've watched any of Borough, you'll realise he's not the only left-back who's going to struggle against Doak this season. And that's the thing with the change, isn't it? I do get it. As I said, the management of a young player who's on his first season of regular football. But if you're Norwich's left back and you see Doak's number go, you think, thank Christ for that.
Yeah. So let's go ahead to this weekend quickly then. Coventry at the Riverside. I mean, it looked like for a big old chunk of Coventry's game at the weekend that they were going to be coming here in a rough old position. They were obviously 2-0 down at home to Luton. The fans were getting pretty restless. It's not been a particularly great start for Coventry, but they turn it around spectacularly in the second half. Ellis Sims is on the score sheet. Haji Wright looks really good. They win that 3-2. And we all know Coventry, Mark Robbins, Indian sign over Borough. I mean, what's your
all over again? I mean, the evidence of the last couple of seasons isn't promising, is it? This is clearly a different Coventry. I think they're
City Mark II, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they're an interesting one, Coventry, aren't they? Because there's probably still this perception of like plucky Coventry having defied the odds clearly to make the playoffs 2 seasons ago, and then like to an extent maybe last year, but they've spent a lot of money, haven't they?
I mean, they've got a lot of money for Gyökeres,
I was
didn't
just
they?
about to say, I know they brought a lot of money in, but they've spent a lot of money. They were bold in the summer, weren't they? And the expectation for Coventry this season has to be top 6, doesn't it? They're no longer a kind of mid-table team bobbing along who push for the top 6. I think the expectation has to be top 6, so they have to deal with that, like Luton do, coming back down. That felt like a big win for them at the weekend, didn't it? The manner of the win as well probably isn't ideal from Borough's perspective. But from Borough, for Borough, if you win this game on Saturday, then clearly the Norwich draw is still frustrating. But 7 points out of 9 in those trio of games is a really good return. If you don't win, then it's spun to 1 win in 5 or whatever it is again, and a failure to kick on from Sheffield United, and there suddenly feels like a bit of pressure on ahead of the trip to QPR next week. So I know it feels like we've said this for the last 2 or 3 games, but it feels pretty big again, doesn't it? I think it feels pretty significant.
I mean, the one thing you just having a look there, so Coventry away form, no wins, 3 draws, 3 defeats. So clearly they are a different prospect at home than they are heading up the Teesside. I saw you on your head there. But what I was going to say was the flip side of that. New Year's Day, Middlesbrough 1, Coventry 3. 17th May 2023, Middlesbrough 0, Coventry 1.
We all know what that was.
And we all know what that was. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, the game just before that, right at the end of the season, which admittedly was a bit of a meaningless game, but that finished 1-1. Does that matter? Does that mean anything? It felt like it did when Bristol City came up, but I don't know. Does that matter? Carrick will say no. He was asked about it before Bristol City. I'm sure he'll be asked about it again. Different players, different team, different scenario. I take all of that on board. It's slightly different, I think, with this Coventry thing, because while there are different players, it's still Mark Robins. A lot of that Coventry team is still the team that beat Borough in the playoffs. They've shown that they kind of know how to do a job on Borough and on Carrick's Borough. That is a dynamic that will play into this weekend's game.
Yeah, I was going to say there, I think the kind of first thing is, like Carrick has to find a way to beat Mark Robins as Coventry, doesn't he? Because Robins has clearly had the edge there. And I don't think, like I said before that Bristol City game, I don't think that can matter normally. I don't think Borough's players are going to be thinking, what about that win in 2011 near Bristol City? We haven't been, but I think this is slightly different in that there's kind of like a fresh rivalry. Rivalry is probably overdoing it, but Borough and Coventry feel like they've played each other so much, only because of those 2 playoff games. But because that came after playing Coventry on the final day of last season, then they played them early in the season, didn't they? So there was 4 games in a really short space of time, and clearly Coventry had the edge in all of those. So I do think Borough's players who are still here, the likes of Hackney and Howson and McGree, you would think I want to get one over on Coventry. Yeah. They own one, don't they? So I think it's probably fair to think there might be a bit of extra edge, spark from Borough's perspective, and hope.
Prediction?
I think I'm going to go draw. I don't think Borough lose, but I don't know whether I can go as far as saying a win. I think I'll go 1-1 draw. What are you saying?
Do you know what? This is going to sound pretty pathetic. I had in the back of my mind 1-1. I think it might be a draw. I do think Mark Robins knows how to play against Borough, and I think that he'll do what he's done before, and negate to a degree Borough's attacking strength. I mean, the way Doak's flying, he could ask them different questions, and that might be kind of key. But yeah, I watched most of that Coventry game because obviously it was the early game, wasn't it? It was on in the press room where I was at, and I mean, it was a classic game of 2 halves. They looked really poor for 45 minutes. They looked brilliant for the second 45 minutes. It kind of depends a little bit on what they turn up like, I think. But yeah, my gut reaction before I threw it to you was I'm probably going to say 1-1 here, so I'll stick with it, 1-1.
Just before we wrap up, I'm sure you'll have seen, but it's no more red day at the Riverside
Yes.
on Saturday because Borough are wearing all
Yeah, you
white.
were down at the was it Teesside Uni where
Teesside Uni for the launch on Tuesday afternoon. Borough wearing an all white, you'll have seen it, an all white kit to raise awareness of the dangers of knife crime because there's some alarming stats, local stats in the area. And we were talking to Hayden Hackney about that because Hackney was there, and Hackney was saying, like, clearly being a local lad, it hits home, and we want to make a difference in any way we can and kind of use our presence in the community to make a difference. But he was talking about how he remembers playing on those pitches at the uni as part of the foundation session that they do, and saying, like, when first team footballers do come and I get the message across, it hits home. It struck me just how aware he was of his standing in an absolutely completely humble way, like how aware he was of his standing and the importance of being like a local academy lad, done good, the kind of star of the academy now. So yeah, fans are being asked to leave the shirts and scarves at home on Saturday to send out what'll be a powerful message. I mean, you look at the Riverside, it's normally a sea of red. To look around and see no red will send out a powerful message, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay, well, we will be back at the start of next week to dissect what has happened, and then obviously Borough off to QPR, aren't they, next Tuesday as well? So it's a busy old spell. So hope you have a good weekend. Thanks for watching. Get in touch and let us know your thoughts on the weekend game, and we will catch up at the start of next week for some more You Are My Borough. But have a good weekend, and hopefully it is a successful one for Borough when they take on Coventry.